Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be talking about the movie Cuckoo that is currently out in theaters. This movie is a very interesting, I think, psychological thriller, and I was not a huge fan, but let's dive into this.
Modern Movie Review.
Okay, so right off the bat, I do want to issue a spoiler warning, as I do with all of my videos. I don't think this is a movie that could particularly be ruined for you via spoilers, but that being said, if you haven't seen the movie and you plan on watching it at some point in the next couple days, maybe click off this video, come back and watch it later. But that being said, man, I don't even know where to start with this movie. Overall, I want to go ahead and say some of the, big things. I really wanted to like this movie. I think I had really high expectations for this movie, and that's probably part of the reason why I didn't like it as much. The overall vibe and essence of this movie was pretty solid, right? I feel like in a lot of ways it kind of feels similar to movies like The Barbarian that came out a couple years ago, where it's like a horror movie that makes you feel very unsettling. The entire town and setting that you're in feels not great. There's a lot of very uneasy feelings that you get watching this movie, and there's definitely a lot of scary moments. And I think for the most part, as a horror movie goes, this movie is pretty horrifying. I think it does a good job with jump scares are great. The scenes that need to take their time and slowly build up the tension do a great job of doing that. However, a lot of this movie's plot is just so lost in its own sauce, if that makes sense. There's just a lot of things where they're like, okay, you know what, cuckoo birds, they have this really interesting dichotomy to them, let's go ahead and throw that into a movie. And they don't do a really good job explaining it. They don't do a really good job fully expanding on each of the characters. The lore seems like very, very deep, but at the same time they keep us at surface level, and there's just so many issues where it's like this movie has so much going on but nothing at all. So one of my biggest takeaways from this movie that I really did not like, Hunter Schafer's character is constantly going through traumatic experiences and stuff like that alone. All of the horror moments in this movie, whenever she sees this girl who's chasing her or whatever, she's by herself. And in a lot of these instances, she'll have this thing happen and she'll be going through it and going through it and going through it. And then something will happen and she'll pass out. And then the next day she'll wake up in a hospital bed, not knowing how she got there. And everybody will just say, oh, you got into some accident. We don't really know what's going on. And that's pretty much it. And I'm so annoyed by this movie because there were 4 or 5 really big horror moments that were exactly that. Hunter Schafer gets chased by some woman. She runs, she trips and falls, she gets injured. The next day she wakes up in a hospital bed. She runs away with some girl. They drive away, they get really high, they get into a really bad car accident. She wakes up the next day. No one addresses what happened. Nobody really dives too deep into what's been going on in this town. And there's so many different issues like that I just have such a problem with this movie. Is, like I said when I first started this video, I feel like this movie's a psychological thriller. I have no idea. And there's so many moments where there are things that are happening where it's like, is this in her head or is this actually happening right now? And because she's so confused and she's so out of the loop, us as the audience are also struggling to figure out, did that just happen? Is it actually something that happened? Are we gonna talk about what just happened? And the pacing of this movie is just so off. I feel like there's a lot of issues with them not giving us enough information and details on specific events and not really doubling down on anything. Whenever an incident would happen and she would be chased by some girl and then she'd get a really bad cut on her head, she'd wake up in a hospital bed and nobody would acknowledge anything that happened with her. They're just kind of brushing it off, and they're treating her like whatever she's experiencing is all in her head. And it makes us as the audience also feel like everything that's going on is all in her head. And what really bothers me about it is there's only one other character who fully experiences some of the stuff that she experiences, and he, for the majority of the movie, doesn't interact with any other characters, and he also kind of feels like he's made up. And it's so bizarre. I feel like this movie had a really bold concept and they had a lot of really interesting things that they wanted to go for, and they really went for it, and it just did not stick the landing with me. I think that there are some people who are going to watch this movie and be captivated by it and think that, oh my god, this is incredible, but I could not be one of those people. I probably need to watch this movie a couple of times, and I don't think I enjoyed it enough to justify doing that, if that makes sense. So overall, I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yum here. If you enjoyed this movie, that's awesome. I'm glad you guys got a good time with it, and I'm glad you guys had fun with it. And I will say, I did enjoy some of the stuff with it. Dan Stevens, absolutely incredible in this. I think that he's very fun in every movie he shows up in. And this really is his year. Between this and Abigail and Godzilla X Kong, he is showing up in things, and he's just being an absolute freak of nature. And I love how weird he is in this. He's very eccentric. He's playing the flute. He's an eccentric billionaire, and he's very eccentric, and I love it. I just think that he plays a very fun character in this. And Hunter Schafer, for the most part, I like a lot of the stuff that they're doing with her character. It's just they don't do as much work with those characters, and I feel like this is probably just because they got really good actors to play those specific roles, but they're not doing as much stuff with the characters as they're doing with explaining the lore and making it something that's more palatable, if that makes sense. But yeah, overall, wasn't really a big fan of this movie. I definitely think that if you're the kind of person who's into psychological thrillers, maybe check this out, and you'll probably like it more than I did. I just couldn't get on board with a lot of the stuff that was happening in this movie. And like I said, my expectations for it were really high, and it kind of came in pretty low. And that sucks. But like I said, there are some moments of it that have good horror. Some of the tension sequences are great. I just did not like the plot, which kind of sucks because that's the majority of what the movie is. But yeah, that being said, if I had to give this movie a final rating, I'm giving it a 61 out of 100. I don't think it's as bad as some of the other horror movies and stuff that has came out this year, but I also think it's really not that great. And even though I have personal biases, like with Dan Stevens and with Hunter Schafer, those are two actors that I absolutely love, I can't really justify ranking it higher. But yeah, that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching, and if you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow. Bow, bow.